The cameras were rolling on the Family Feud stage in Atlanta when Denise Calloway turned to her husband Raymond, smiled the smile of a woman who has been waiting for permission to be honest, and said clearly into her active microphone, "Baby, I love you. But you are absolutely useless around the house." Raymond Calloway opened his mouth. Raymond Calloway closed his mouth. The studio audience of 300 people erupted so loudly that the floor manager had to signal for quiet. And Steve Harvey, who had spent 38 years in television watching couples talk about their marriages on public stages, froze mid-step on the way to the podium, turned slowly to face Denise, and said, "We are going to need to stop this game for a minute, because what started as a television moment was about to become something else entirely. A conversation about a marriage, a health crisis invisible to everyone watching, and a man who had been called useless by his wife because he was too proud to tell her why he couldn't get off the couch." The Calloway family arrived at the Family Feud studio on a Wednesday in September, the kind of day that still feels like summer. Raymond, 53, walked in first, a broad-shouldered man with a careful gait that Denise later said she had been watching change over 18 months without knowing what it meant. Denise, 50, was next, followed by their daughter Kayla, 27, their son Deshaun, 24, and Denise's younger sister Patrice, 46, who had flown in from Houston because Denise had specifically asked for her, and Raymond had said Patrice was too loud, and Denise had said that was exactly why she wanted her there. Steve did his warm-up. He asked who was the boss of the family. Denise raised her hand before the question was finished. Raymond said he was the boss. Steve looked at Raymond. He looked at Denise. He said, "Raymond, does she let you believe that, or are you genuinely uninformed?" The audience loved it. Raymond laughed. Denise laughed. It was easy, comfortable, the kind of married couple banter that plays beautifully on television because it looks like fun from the outside. But nobody in that studio knew what had been happening at the Calloway house for the past 16 months. Raymond Calloway had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis 18 months before this taping. Not the mild kind, not the kind that responds quickly to the first-line medications, but an aggressive bilateral presentation that had already begun to affect his hands and knees and left him, on bad days, unable to grip a coffee cup or climb stairs without stopping to breathe through the pain. His rheumatologist had described it as early-stage systemic, which meant it was moving. His first medication had failed after 4 months. His second had partially worked for 3 months, and then stopped. He was currently on his third treatment protocol, and nobody yet knew if it was going to hold. Raymond had told no one outside the medical team, and Kayla, who had driven him to 2 appointments when the pain had been bad enough that he didn't trust himself behind the wheel. He had not told Denise the full scope of it. He had told her he had some joint issues they were figuring out, and then he had changed the subject and asked about dinner, and Denise, who trusted her husband the way long-married people trust each other completely and without requiring constant confirmation, had accepted that and moved forward. What Denise experienced was not Raymond's diagnosis. What Denise experienced was the absence of Raymond. The Raymond who had, for 27 years of marriage, taken the trash out every single Wednesday morning, fixed the leaky faucets himself, organized the garage on Saturday mornings, grilled on Sundays. That Raymond had been replaced, gradually and without explanation, by a Raymond who sat in the recliner most evenings and said his back was bothering him, who left the trash bag in the kitchen when she wasn't looking and hoped she'd take it, who hadn't touched the garage in 6 months, who waved off Sunday grilling by saying it was too hot. Denise, who worked as an administrative director at a school district and had spent 3 decades managing complex systems with imperfect information, reached a reasonable conclusion. Raymond had gotten comfortable. Raymond was coasting. Raymond, her Raymond, who she loved completely, had, somewhere in the middle of their comfortable later marriage, decided that effort was optional. She had not said it with cruelty. She had said it with the cheerful exhaustion of a woman who has made peace with something she hasn't yet decided to fight. Baby, I love you, but you are absolutely useless around the house. The audience response was immediate and enormous. Laughter, recognition, applause. Deshaun covered his face. Kayla started laughing and couldn't stop. Patrice pointed at Raymond from across the stage and said, "I told you she noticed." Raymond was not laughing. Raymond looked at Denise with an expression that Steve Harvey later described in an interview as the face of a man who has been keeping something in for a long time and just had the door opened by accident. Raymond's jaw worked. His hands, resting on the podium, tightened slowly. Steve, watching, recognized something in Raymond's face that was not embarrassment. "Stop everything," Steve said quietly. He held up one hand to the audience, and the room went quiet in a way it hadn't all episode. "Raymond," Steve said, "I want to ask you something, man to man." Raymond looked at him. "Is there something going on with you that your family doesn't know about?" The studio fell completely silent. 300 people stopped moving. Even the camera operators held still. Raymond looked at Denise. His eyes went to his hands on the podium. "It's rheumatoid arthritis," he said. "Been dealing with it for 18 months. I have good days and bad days. And on the bad days, I can't hold a cup. I can't open a jar. I can't take the trash out without my hands locking up halfway there." He paused. "I didn't want anybody to see me like that, so I said my back was bothering me. I said it was hot. I sat in the chair." Denise Calloway's hand went to her mouth. The audience was absolutely silent. Raymond said, "I know how it looked. I know what it looked like." He didn't look at Denise when he said the next part. He looked at the floor. "I'm supposed to be the one who handles things. I'm supposed to be the one taking the trash out and fixing the faucet. And I couldn't. And I didn't know how to tell you that I didn't know how to say it." Denise had crossed to him before anyone realized she had moved. She put her hand on his face, and he let her hold it there. The crew members had stopped working. Several of them were looking at the floor. Steve Harvey took off his glasses. He looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then he looked at Raymond. "I'm going to tell you something," Steve said. "There is nothing in a marriage harder than admitting that you can't do something you've always done. Nothing harder than going from the man who handles it to the man who is sitting in the chair. I know that feeling. Not from arthritis, but I know what it is to be the person who's supposed to have it together and to be sitting somewhere where you don't have it together and to not be able to say it out loud. I know that exact silence." He paused. "Because I've sat in that chair. Mine was a Ford Tempo. In a parking lot. For 3 years. And I didn't tell anybody because I didn't know how to say I'm not the man I said I was going to be to the people who needed me to be him." "This has never happened on this show before," Steve said, turning to his producers. "What I'm about to do is off the record from the format, but it's on the record from me." He took out his phone. He called a doctor, a rheumatology specialist at Emory University Medical Center in Atlanta, a physician he had a personal connection to, and explained Raymond's situation on speaker in front of the audience, asking for an expedited evaluation appointment and access to the most advanced treatment protocols currently in clinical trials. The doctor agreed. Steve confirmed it on the call, but Steve wasn't done. He called a service that coordinated in-home assistance for individuals with mobility limiting conditions and arranged a 6-month package of household support for the Calloway home, specifically covering the tasks that Raymond could no longer do on his worst days: trash, yard work, heavy lifting, with a note attached that said these services were so Raymond Calloway can save his strength for the things only Raymond can do. Deshaun, standing on the stage, was completely silent. He was looking at his father with an expression that had nothing casual in it. Steve turned to the audience. "I want to say something to every man watching this. Pride will kill your marriage faster than anything else. Faster than money, faster than distance, faster than hard times. The silence Raymond kept for 18 months, that silence was not strength. That was fear. And I know, because I wore that same silence for 3 years in a parking lot, and it almost took everything." He looked at Raymond. "You are not useless," Steve said. "You are a man dealing with something hard in the only way you knew how. And your wife, that woman right there, is going to need you to start telling her the truth. Because she cannot love what she cannot see." Both families received the full cash prize. The competing family, the Hendersons from Nashville, had gathered in a quiet cluster at their podium. Their mother, Yvonne Henderson, raised her hand and asked if she could say something. Steve nodded. Yvonne said, "My husband had Parkinson's for 2 years before he told me. I just want Raymond to know I understand." Raymond looked at Yvonne for a long moment. He nodded once. When the episode aired 8 weeks later, it drew 92 million views in 72 hours. The hashtag useless husband transformed overnight into #Tell Her the Truth, which was trending in over 50 countries by the following morning. Comments poured in from men and women across the world sharing their own versions of Raymond's silence, the diagnoses kept quiet, the lost jobs hidden, the capabilities reduced and disguised and never named. 3 months after the taping, Raymond began a new biologic treatment at Emory that his new specialist called the right fit for his presentation. By month 5, he had grip strength back in his right hand sufficient to hold a coffee cup without assistance on most mornings. The in-home services ran for their contracted 6 months and were then discontinued because Raymond, on a good week run of his new medication, had taken the trash out 3 Wednesdays in a row. Denise texted Steve Harvey's assistant a photograph of an empty trash can at the curb with the message, "He took it out." I cried. A year after the taping, Raymond and Denise Calloway gave a joint interview to a magazine that runs a monthly column on marriage. Raymond said the moment Steve asked the question on stage was the first time he had felt permission to say the thing out loud. He said, "I thought telling her would make me smaller. Turns out it made us bigger." 5 years later, Raymond Calloway volunteers twice monthly at a men's health awareness program in Atlanta that specifically works with men over 50 managing chronic illness. He tells the group, "Every session, one thing: your wife cannot love what she cannot see. Tell her." The lesson of that Wednesday in September is not that Denise was wrong to say what she said. She was working with the information she had, and she called it as she saw it, with love underneath every word. The lesson is that the man in the chair is not always comfortable. Sometimes the man in the chair is fighting a war no one can see, and he needs someone to ask the question before he will ever answer it. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that the silences in a marriage deserve as much attention as the arguments, subscribe to this channel and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who is sitting in a chair they haven't explained. Have you ever discovered something about someone you love that changed how you saw everything before it? Let us know in the comments. And ring that notification bell for more moments that prove that honesty, even when it's late, is never too late.